You've seen them, for sure. You walk into a yoga studio, or maybe you're just scrolling through Instagram,
Yeah.
and there they are. These, like, glowing, frosted white buckets.
Mm-hmm. They look almost otherworldly, don't they? Like something you'd find in a temple on another planet.
That is the perfect way to put it. The
Yeah.
crystal singing bowls, they are absolutely everywhere right now.
And the whole vibe around them is always so
Mm.
ancient, so mystical.
Totally. The marketing is always, connect with your ancestors, tune your chakras. It feels like a practice that's been around for thousands of years.
Which is exactly why today's deep dive is going to be a bit of a shock to the system for a lot of people.
Absolutely. Because if you think these bowls are ancient artifacts passed down by monks, you are in for a huge surprise.
Yeah.
We've gone through the whole stack. We're talking manufacturing patents. We're talking scientific studies on brainwaves and some pretty honest industry critiques
Yeah.
to figure out what these things actually are.
And the reality is just, it's so fascinating. It's this head-on collision of two completely different worlds.
Right.
We're going to look at the high-tech industrial origins of these bowls, the actual neuroscience of how they kind of hack your brain. And yes, there is real peer-reviewed science there.
And the controversy, right, the controversy around how they're sold to us.
Exactly.
So here's our mission for today.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to separate the woo-woo from the waveforms.
I like that.
We're going to bust some myths about crushed gemstones and explain how a byproduct of the computer chip industry became the hottest tool for meditation.
It really is one of the most ironic origin stories in the entire wellness world.
Okay, let's jump right into that, the origin story. Because honestly, when I picture a crystal singing bowl,
Mm-hmm.
I imagine some craftsman, chipping away at a giant quartz rock in a cave.
And that's the image they want you to have, of course. But if you actually look at the timeline, the whole story just, it falls apart.
How so?
Well, these bowls, they don't show up in ancient texts. They're not in museums of antiquity. They just appeared in the 1980s.
So they're younger than the Walkman.
They are younger than the Walkman and way younger than the Star Wars franchise. And they weren't born in a monastery. They were born in Silicon Valley.
Okay, wait. You have to connect the dots for me there. How do we get from Silicon Valley tech to a sound bath in a yoga studio?
It all starts with the semiconductor industry. To make computer chips, chips in your phone, your laptop, you need silicon.
Right.
But you need this single perfect crystal of silicon. It's called an ingot.
I've seen pictures of those. They look like these long, shiny silver sausages.
That's a pretty good description, yeah. But growing that silver sausage, it requires these extreme conditions, and they use something called the Czochralski method.
The Czochralski method.
Yeah.
Sounds intense.
It is. It's serious engineering. You have to melt silicon at incredibly high temperatures, and you need a container to hold that molten liquid. But here's the catch.
What's that?
The container has to be ridiculously pure. Chemically pure. If even a tiny bit of the container melts into the silicon, like we're talking 1 atom out of a billion, it ruins the whole thing. The chip won't work.
So you can't just use a metal pot.
No way. The metal would leach in. So the industry developed these things called quartz crucibles. They're industrial bowls made from silica sand that's been refined to be 99.992% pure.
A crucible. So the singing bowl I see for like $300 is actually just an industrial container.
That's what it is. I mean, they're still manufactured for the solar industry and the semiconductor industry. If you walk into a factory making solar panels, you will see these bowls.
They're just not playing music with them.
No. So how did they make the leap?
Yeah. Did a factory worker just like drop a wrench on one and go, hey, that sounds nice?
The story's a little fuzzy, but that's pretty much it. It was a discovery of industrial waste. You see, these crucibles have to be perfect.
Okay.
If one comes out of the mold with, like, a tiny bubble, or if the purity is slightly off, say it's only 99.9% pure instead of 99.99%, it's useless for making microchips.
So it's trash. Expensive trash.
It was high-end garbage. But at some point in the 80s, someone, a worker, a musician, who knows now, tapped one of these rejected crucibles, and instead of a thud, it rang.
And if you've ever heard one, rang is an understatement. The sound just keeps going.
It does, and that's because of the purity of the quartz. But this is where we have to bust a huge myth I see all the time in the sources.
Okay, that's a...
Marketers always say these bowls have the piezoelectric properties of raw quartz crystal.
Oh, I've seen this everywhere.
Yeah.
The pitch is basically that because quartz watches run on that, the bowl is like generating electricity that charges your brain or something.
And piezoelectricity is a real thing, don't get me wrong. If you squeeze a raw quartz crystal, it generates a voltage. But here's the physics problem.
Okay.
To make the bowl, you take silica sand and you heat it to 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
4,000.
About 2200 Celsius. You do this in a centrifugal mold, so it's spinning at high speed, forcing the sand into the shape of a bowl.
That sounds pretty violent.
It's incredibly violent. And when you melt quartz down like that, you destroy the crystalline structure. It stops being a crystal lattice, and it becomes what physicists call an amorphous solid.
Can you give us an analogy for that? What's the difference?
Sure. Think of a raw crystal, like a perfectly built brick wall. All the atoms are stacked in a neat repeating pattern. It's organized.
Got it.
When you melt it into glass, it's like taking a sledgehammer to that wall. The bricks are still there, the silica's still there, but they are in a chaotic jumble.
So same ingredient, but the structure is just chaos.
Correct. It creates glass, a very pure fused silica glass. But because that organized structure is gone, the piezoelectric property is pretty much gone too.
So when people say the bowl is amplifying your thoughts,
Physically speaking, you cooked that property right out of it.
okay, so if I'm listening right now, I might be feeling a little disillusioned. We're basically playing with giant, expensive industrial glass leftovers.
I can see that, but I'd argue you shouldn't be. Because while the magic crystal energy might be marketing fluff, the sound physics are incredibly real. And that's why people actually feel different when they hear them.
Right, because I've been to a sound bath. And even knowing this now, I can't deny the experience. You feel it in your bones. It's physically intense.
It is. Which brings us to our next segment, the neuroscience. We have this fascinating study in the stack by Kim and Choi. This isn't just, I felt good stuff. They hooked people up to EEGs. They measured brain activity.
Love when we get to the hard data.
Yeah.
So what did they find out?
They played crystal singing bowls for people and just watched their brainwaves.
Yeah.
Specifically, they used a bowl that produced what's called a beat frequency of around 6.68 hertz.
Okay, before we get to the results, let's unpack beat frequency, because a single bowl is just one object. How does one thing make a beat?
This is the cool part of the physics. When you strike the bowl, it doesn't just vibrate at one frequency. It vibrates in multiple modes at the same time.
Yeah.
You get the main tone, but you also get all these harmonics.
Okay.
And when those different sound waves interact in the air, they create interference patterns.
Like ripples in a pond.
Exactly like ripples in a pond. Imagine throwing two stones in. Where the ripples meet, sometimes they add up and make a bigger wave, and sometimes they cancel each other out. With sound, this creates a wah-wah-wah pulse. That pulsing rhythm is the beat.
And our brain just latches onto that pulse.
It mimics it. The term for it is the frequency following response, or FFR. Your brain waves literally start to synchronize to the rhythm of the sound. It's like when you're walking with a friend and you just unconsciously start walking in step with them. Your brain does that with the bowl.
So in this study, the bowl was pulsing at 6.68 hertz.
Yeah.
Where does that land, the brain?
So 6.68 hertz is right in the middle of the theta brainwave range.
And remind us what theta is all about.
Theta is that twilight state. It's deep meditation, it's high creativity, it's the very edge of sleep, that feeling right before you drift off. And the results of this study were just staggering. When people listen to the bowl, their delta waves, which are linked to deep restorative sleep and healing, they increase by up to 135%.
135%? That is not a small change.
It is huge. And at the same time, their high frequency waves, gamma, beta, the ones tied to stress, alertness, overthinking, those dropped way down.
So it literally forced their brains to shut down the busy parts and drop into a state of deep relaxation.
Essentially, yes. And here's a little technical detail for all the audio nerds out there. You often hear about binaural beats, right? Where you need headphones for it to work.
Yeah, it was a huge thing on YouTube for a while. Binaural beats for focus.
Right. Well, crystal bowls create what are called monaural beats. The pulse actually happens in the air physically before it even gets to your ears, so you don't need headphones. Your whole body hears it.
Oh, that makes sense.
That 6 hertz pulse is a physical pressure wave hitting your skin, which might explain why it feels so much more immersive than just listening to a meditation app.
It's not just in your head, it's like in the room with you.
Exactly. So even though it's an industrial glass bowl, its ability to slow down your brain waves is scientifically measurable. It's not magic, it's just physics. The bowl is a tool that mechanically downshifts your nervous system.
I like that. Mechanically downshifts your nervous system. But this brings up a comparison I see all the time. If these crystal bowls are the new kids on the block, what about the old school metal ones? The Tibetan bowls.
The great showdown. Crystal versus metal.
Because they're very different, aren't they?
Oh, completely different. Let's start with the material. We know crystal bowls are 99.9% silica glass. Traditional Tibetan bowls, if they're authentic, are an alloy of 7 different metals.
7. I'm guessing that's symbolic.
It is. Traditionally, they correspond to celestial bodies. So you've got gold for the sun, silver for the moon, copper for Venus, iron for Mars, all the way to lead for Saturn.
Lead. Okay, so note to self, maybe don't drink out of the antique Tibetan bowl.
Generally good advice. But this alloy, it creates a totally different structure. These bowls are hammered by hand, the metal is folded, stressed, and they have a lineage that goes back like 2,400 years in the Himalayas.
So that's the actual ancient part.
Yeah.
How does the sound compare? If I'm doing a blind test, can I tell them apart?
Instantly. No question. Crystal bowls are loud, they're piercing. Because it's glass, they produce a very pure, almost sine wave-like tone. It's very direct.
Very precise.
And because they're made industrially, they can be tuned to exact musical notes. So you'll see them marketed as C note for the root chakra.
Right, it's very specific, almost digital in its precision.
Whereas the metal bowls are totally analog, they're richer, they have this complex mess of overtones. It's a warmer, darker sound. The sustain isn't as long, but that harmonic complexity is often described as more grounding.
I've heard people say the crystal bowls can be a little much, like too sharp.
That's a really common complaint. Because they're so pure and high-pitched, they can actually trigger headaches or even anxiety in some people if they're played too loudly. Metal bowls tend to be more forgiving, more earthy.
And there's a durability issue, I'd imagine. You probably don't want to drop the glass one.
Oh, it's a huge difference. A Tibetan bowl, you can drop it, sit on it, throw it in a backpack. It's a chunk of metal. A crystal bowl, it's glass. If you look at it wrong, it could shatter.
You practically need a padded case for it.
You do. You need very careful handling. So for anyone who travels to do sound therapy, the crystal bowls are kind of a logistical nightmare.
Okay, so we've got the fragile tech-born glass bowl versus the rugged ancient alloy bowl. But let's go back to the crystal ones.
Yeah.
Because even within that world, it seems like there are different tiers. I see the classic white frosted ones, but then I also see these incredibly expensive, colorful, shiny ones.
Ah, yes. The alchemy bowls.
They sound like something out of a video game. The rose quartz platinum alchemy bowl. And the price. Some of these are thousands of dollars. What's going on there? Are they actually made of solid rose quartz?
No, and this is another area where the marketing gets a little slippery. The core is still that same silica glass crucible, but the alchemy bowls go through a second process. They use heat to fuse precious metals or minerals onto the surface of the bowl.
Fused onto the surface, so it's a coating.
Essentially, yes. It's often done with vapor deposition, which again is a high-tech industrial process used in making computer chips. They basically turn the metal into a gas and bond it to the glass.
So an amethyst bowl is a quartz glass bowl with a microscopic layer of amethyst powder fused to the outside.
That's it. It feels, well, it's different from saying a bowl made of amethyst.
For sure.
It does change the look. They're beautiful. And the coating can dampen the sound a tiny bit, making it a little sweeter. But the main vibration is still coming from the quartz silica. The price difference, though, is massive.
From a couple hundred to a couple thousand.
For a layer of dust and a cool look, and maybe a slightly different tone. But this gets to the bigger controversy we found in the sources. It's not just about the price of the bowls, it's about the language used to sell the whole experience.
Right. I saw one post in our stack that was pretty heated. It used the phrase, New Age faux spiritual misappropriation, which is a mouthful.
But it's a valid critique. The term sound healing is thrown around so loosely. You have people buying a few industrial crucibles, taking a weekend workshop, and then calling themselves healers.
And that can be really problematic if someone has serious trauma or a medical issue and they're expecting a cure.
That's the risk. And there's a push within the community to shift the language. Instead of sound healing, using terms like sound yoga therapy or healing sound.
It's a subtle shift, but it changes who has the power.
It does. Healing sound implies the sound is therapeutic, which, as we saw, the science supports. Sound healer implies the person playing the bowl can cure you, and that gets into tricky territory.
The whole guru complex, or spiritual bypassing, right?
Yeah.
Using the sound bath to avoid doing the actual psychological work.
That's the concern. And it's so interesting because despite all this, the trend is just exploding. We're seeing it go totally mainstream. In Thailand, for example, huge celebrities are making it popular. It's moving out of the niche circles and into luxury wellness and corporate retreats.
Which brings us right back to that central irony. I just can't get over it.
The great paradox of the crystal bowl.
We use these things to disconnect. We go to a sound bath for a digital detox to get away from our screens.
And yet the instrument we're using to do that is made from the exact same material and the exact same industrial process that creates the chips inside our phones and our laptops.
We're using the womb of the microchip to escape the microchip.
It's almost poetic in a weird way. The waste of the digital age is now the treasure of the spiritual age.
It really is. So what's the takeaway for the listener? If you're lying on a yoga mat and you're listening to that thrumming sound, does it matter that the bowl was born in a factory and not a temple?
You know, I honestly don't think it does. This is where the expert in me has to just bow to the experience. If the frequency following response works, if your delta waves go up and your stress comes down, then the tool is effective.
Whether it's ancient bronze or modern glass.
Exactly. The origin story doesn't negate the physics. If the sound wave physically gets your brain to a state of calm, does it really matter if the object was first intended to hold molten silicon?
I love that. So next time you see that glowing white bowl, you don't have to roll your eyes at the ancient wisdom caption. You can just appreciate the very modern physics happening inside your brain.
And maybe appreciate that industrial recycling can sound so beautiful.
True. Before we wrap up, I want to leave everyone with one last thought. We talk so much about ancient wisdom being the gold standard, but maybe the fact that this is a modern industrial accident makes it even cooler.
I think it raises a great question. Is magic just physics we haven't explained yet? Or in this case, physics we can finally measure? The bowl slows your brainwaves. That feels magical, but we can see it on an EEG. Does knowing the mechanism make it less spiritual? I'd argue it makes it more profound. We built a machine to grow computer brains, and we accidentally found a way to soothe human ones.
Wow. We built a machine to grow computer brains and accidentally found a way to soothe human ones. That is definitely going to stick with me.
It's a happy accident of the Silicon Age.
Thank you all for diving deep with us today into the crystal frequency. We'll catch you on the next one.
Keep listening.